Détroit, la ville qui tombe en ruine. Quand on en parle, les mots qui nous reviennent sont criminalité, chômage, drogue. On est allé y faire un tour pour voir ce qu'on pourrait y faire, à part visiter des maisons abandonnées.
At one time, this was one of the strongest cities in the world in the 70s and 80s. We had the strongest middle class in the world. So there's all these empty homes you see all around us. My street is completely rural, you know?
Charlie vit tout seul dans sa rue, dans une maison qu'il a payée 500 $. Alors quand il s'ennuie, il doit faire un tour dans la rue voisine, où se trouve une commune.
It's kind of been, a constant, build up. So there wasn't like maybe a initial point of birth, but just kind of evolving over time. Dr. Bob started his cafe down the road about maybe 8 years ago, and so he was the first kind of anchor here, I guess.
And it's really beautiful what's going on here because it is a community healing. It's a real organic unfolding. It's the community that's doing it. Yes, I'm kind of a focal point where I have access and I have a little bit of money where I can help people with water, and I'm glad to do that. I'm really grateful to be in a giving position rather than have to be in the asking position.
There's not enough people necessarily to have designated roles, so it's not that large. So there definitely is a lot of multitasking, and pretty much you have to, kind of do a little bit of everything, essentially.
Okay.
So it's going on in a garage back there. We're moving some bikes over and getting things organized.
Cool.
So we'll mobilize more people around the neighborhood.
Like you guys said, in your neighborhood, you don't really even know your neighbors. I mean, I can talk out to all the crack addicts around here, and this hooker you guys hooked up. You talked. She's a normal, good person, but just like I said, like lot of stories. Kids who are abandoned, kids who are brought up with crack dads and crack. It's like this is what's the word? Intrinsic in our society. I've lived in this neighborhood personally for a year. I've been coming here for 12 years because Dr. Bob's lived in this neighborhood, and I've been helping out with the houses, putting windows in. We build wood burners for people to keep them warm. Help board up houses. We get blankets and clothing, food donations. We help people survive that the government have forgot about, and society has forgotten about. People that would be homeless. If you want a free place to live, come to Detroit. All right, we're gonna go work on. We're gonna drop this stuff off. I got a whole bag full of vegetables to make salad.
Yes.
I got some cool of those long radishes.
From your garden?
Yeah, our garden.
We eat good here. The way that we can fight the government is by growing our own food and being independent from them completely. Here we go. Wow. And we always, we try to eat together once a day at least, whether it's beer or cigarettes or tobacco or food. We try to share everything.
Quand les industries s'en vont, quand la ville fait faillite, la vie continue pourtant. Il faut manger quand même. Ça, les gens de Détroit ont réussi à le faire grâce à leurs jardins. Et des jardins, il y en a maintenant partout.
Yeah, there's lots of poverty here in Detroit, and not so much the people, but a lot of white people are moving in, and they see opportunity of buying places cheap and land cheap, and a lot of people are wanting to garden and get simple, and nobody wants a job anymore, you know.
As the population has moved out of the city and as businesses have moved out of the city, we have a great deal of vacant land. The city has 40,000 acres of vacant land in the aggregate, and it's growing. Therefore, either they're going to sit there vacant and unproductive, or there has to be some kind of use to which they can be put that will benefit the city and the residents.
This farm here was I was going to leave this neighborhood because when I first came here, it was very chaotic. There was a lot of fighting and just like people stealing stuff. And when I came here and I saw this place, I started crying, and it inspired me to stay here. They got these beautiful fruit trees I was saying that are planted all along here, and just the inspired this is exactly how I would want my farm to be, and it was just an inspiration for me to stay here and work things out and just work through the negativity and just keep pushing through.
I've been sort of in charge of the farm for 5 years now. I have summers. Kevin, my husband's an arborist. And yeah, we have sort of a family of businesses. The tree company is Singing Tree, and that was sort of the parent company. And then if you can tell, there's lots of wood around, and we use it for the garden, like mulching and things like that.
Urban farming is one of the most attractive alternative uses that has been proposed. And there are all kinds of other benefits. I mean, there's benefits to the tax base, there's benefits to creating food, dealing with the food shortages that may exist in the low-income areas of the city, and creating jobs, and creating a healthy, attractive neighborhood environment where farming is taking place, so long as it's done appropriately.
This is one of the most intriguing places because of the intentional Black leadership, and I think what you'll see around America is a dominance of white-led organizations, a lot of college graduates, a lot of females as well, and so this is different.
D-Town Farm is one of the projects of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, and it's a 7-acre farm where we grow about 37 different crops. We use organic methods, and really the most important thing is not even the crops that are being grown, but it's kind of the consciousness that's being grown in Detroit's African American community about farming. A large part of our work is reframing agriculture work as honorable work, and there can be an act of self-determination for a community, as opposed to the styles of agriculture in the past that exploited our labor in order to make other people wealthy. So our focus is not necessarily the immediate community surrounding the farm, but it's more a citywide approach. We participated in the creation of the Urban Agriculture Ordinance, which was passed by the City Council last year. And so that was significant because prior to that, urban agriculture was quasi-legal in the city of Detroit. So now we have some clarity, first on what is considered to be urban agriculture, secondly on what types of agriculture are most beneficial for Detroit. The Detroit Agricultural Ordinance kind of prescribes what scale is most appropriate for Detroit and sets in place some requirements for larger scale farming to try to ensure that those larger scale farms are beneficial to the community and are not exploiting the community. All urban agriculture is not the same. You have some community-based agriculture which is really rooted in efforts to lift up the grassroots community, and then you have other models which are much more corporate-driven models that are driven primarily by the desire to make profit and don't really have as one of their objectives enriching and empowering the communities in which they operate.
Ce que Malik vient de nous expliquer, c'est que dès qu'il y a quelque chose qui marche bien, il y a toujours un capitaliste qui est pas très loin pour en profiter. C'est aussi vrai dans le monde de l'agriculture urbaine à Détroit. Le meilleur exemple, c'est le projet Ends.
John Hans proposed to assemble 100 acres, and he was going to have a 100-acre farm on the east side of Detroit. Anytime somebody from outside the neighborhood comes in and wants to assemble 100 acres, the local residents are fearful that means their removal, or it means activities that will be detrimental to their existence.
His primary goal, well, I think he does want to, from his perspective, do something to make Detroit better, but it's very much rooted within the profit motive.
The local community immediately was concerned and opposed. The area that he was proposing to have his 100-acre urban farm had a lot of scattered site lots. And so he changed his proposal from creating a traditional farming operation to planting trees.
And so my assessment is that, from the best I can tell, and I've had a chance to meet John Hans and sit down and talk to him eyeball to eyeball to really try to get a feel for where he was coming from. He told me himself that for him, Hans Farm is a legacy project, meaning that in 40 years or so, when the trees that he's planting now are harvested, there's going to be some profit that will be generated. And he said specifically he wants, to kind of set his daughter up to be able to receive that profit in 40 years. So for me, it's an example of the intergenerational passing down of wealth. I also think that the Hans Project is dangerous because it sets a dangerous precedent for the city to sell a huge amount of publicly owned land to one wealthy white man. And we intentionally use that phrase, wealthy white man, because it hits on the three main ways in which oppression manifests: class, race, and gender. And so we are against any policy that continues the legacy of the accumulation of land and the accumulation of wealth in the hands of wealthy white men. We are much more in favor of policies that enable the majority of people to benefit from publicly owned land.
We want to process a lot of food. So we're going to grow enough to process food, but this is our pilot project, so this is our first attempt at growing.
The folks with Recovery Park, Gary Wozniak, proposes to assemble a large area of land. I believe it's in the range of 100 acres, and there's a lot of vacant land available to begin with.
And then in year 5, we'll be at full capacity, so we'll have 10 acres of hydroponic, we'll have 3 acres of the high tunnel, we'll have 10 acres of field crop growing, we'll have the water, the hops, and that'll be about 1,200 jobs.
And there have been almost nobody that's been able to assemble a large tract of land, which Recovery Park is attempting to do.
13 weeks ago, this was the parking lot. Put the structure up over a weekend. Took a couple of weeks to allow people from that needed some training and some job service training on building the beds and filling them with a layer of pea gravel, agri-fabric, and then a plant-based compost on top. Got to planting. Been selling out of here for about 8 weeks now. Our market is that we're using restaurants, but a big difference with us is we don't just like grow what we want to grow, we grow what the chefs want us to grow. So the conversation with them is always, what are you guys looking for? I think a lot of chefs want to support local growers, but you can't just go in there and be like, okay, this is what I have. You actually have to grow something that is a little bit what they want.
The real impetus is to create the jobs for people, transfer those businesses to people so that they can really build wealth in their communities by owning their businesses and by owning their houses, and really reinstill, that sense of ownership, because the neighborhoods need to benefit. Most of the unemployment's in the neighborhoods, and the jobs that they're creating downtown, they're not accessible to those people.
One of the things that urban agriculture offers is jobs, but they're not the same high-paying jobs as the city once experienced when it had an industrial base. But it's income, and it would add income to that which is already here.
So what'll happen is, as we start to bring jobs back into the neighborhood, hundreds at a time, The housing will start to follow the jobs, and once housing starts to develop around the jobs, then lifestyle options, small shops and things will start to build around the housing.
Most of the money in the food system is made in the middle layers, where the food is washed, processed, packaged, distributed. All of those layers have to be developed in a much more robust way so that we have a localized food system, not just urban farming, but we have all these other layers that go along with the urban farming that also generate income. And so as we begin to develop the infrastructure to address those other layers, then we'll see a greater economic stimulus as a result of the farming.
Alors, peut-on dire que l'agriculture urbaine peut représenter une alternative économique viable pour une ville comme Détroit? Une ville qui, on le sait, a toujours tourné à 100 000 à l'heure alentour de l'automobile.
Large farms are part of the solution. There won't be many more in the near future until somebody else like Gary Wozniak or John Hines attempts to assemble land. And there could be a lot more small growers. Now the question is, if there are 2,000 small growers, and there were 400 or 500 5 or 6 years ago, will that increase continue, or will at some point it be tapped out? The small growers for the foreseeable future, in terms of the expansion of urban farming, will be the driving force.
We need the city to view urban agriculture is an integral part of the development of the city, not just the temporary use of land, but something that can actually contribute to the health, the well-being, and the economy of this city of Detroit.
And I think you went around, there's community gardens happening everywhere, and as you see, there's land everywhere, Everybody talks about progress and what's going on downtown, and there's lots of money coming downtown, but I think it's running dry, and we're gonna have to go back to the earth and really learn to live with her again.
Not this garden in particular, or farm in particular, but a lot of community gardens, a lot of youth gardens. Keep kids, give them a safe and productive venue, or an activity to do during the day and during weekends, to learn to connect with other people in the community, across race, across income, but also connect with I guess the grounds and the earth, and just understanding what, being able to plant something and bring it to life and make it bear fruit. I think that teaches kids a lot about responsibility.
There's no doubt that having the garden in the community changes the community. I think there's definitely, it's a nice place to be, whether or not people want to buy the vegetables or want to eat the vegetables. It's a nice place to stand and chat, or have sex in your car. There's tons of prostitutes, and they're always parking right outside the garden.
I was going to ask.
And they're now looking at the amendment of the zoning ordinance to permit animals to be kept in the city, and that's a more difficult question, but it's being addressed, and some form of amendment will be submitted to allow some animals to be kept in the city as part of the farming operation.
Est-ce que Détroit ira mieux dans les années qui viennent? C'est encore difficile à dire. Mais il y a une chose au moins qu'on peut retenir de ce voyage, c'est qu'au moins, il y a des idées qui font leur chemin.
My initials are Captain, AIMFP Canuck. Anything is motherfucking possible Canuck. Or Mighty Fine, or Mama's Fudge, or whatever you want to use for MF, but I call it motherfucking fine possible.